Hey everyone, Oddball Comics here. So today, if you guys saw that new kickin' intro, I'd like to give a special shout out to Strider Designs for making that for me. Huge shout out, his link to his stuff will be down below. Other than that, so today we're going to talk about Jean Grey. So Jean Grey is a pretty cool character. She is one of the many faces of the X-Men, X-Factor, and multiple other teams. So I want to go a little bit in depth for multiple reasons. One, we just had the Phoenix movie come out, and I know it didn't do too hot when it came to the movie itself. And I do want to teach people a little bit more about her who don't really know her too well. And also, secondly, and if you're a Marvel Strike Force fan like me, we're about to have Jean Grey released, or i.e. Phoenix, released into the game here very shortly. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to teach you guys who she is and what she's all about. So Jean Grey is a daughter of John and Elaine Grey. Like, Jean's mutant powers of telepathy and telekinesis first really manifested when her best friend was hit by a car and killed. Jean actually mentally linked at this point with her friend and nearly dies with her. But this event leaves her in a comatose state, and when she's brought back to consciousness, her parents seek help from Professor X, Charles Xavier, and Xavier sets up mental blocks for her telepathy until she's old enough to really able to control this. So leaving her with access only to her telekinetic powers, Xavier later recruits her as a teenager to be part of the X-Men team as Marvel Girl. So the team's sole female member at this time, and after several missions with the X-Men, Xavier removes Jean's mental blocks, and she's able to use and control her telepathic powers. So after this, she really begins a relationship with Cyclops. And that's really her main romantic relationship, but though she does develop a secret attraction to Wolverine. Now, during like an emergency mission in space, the X-Men do find their shuttle damaged, and Jean pilots the shuttle back to Earth, but it is exposed to a fatal levels of radiation. Now, dying but determined to save Cyclops and her friends, Jean calls out for help, and it's answered by the cosmic entity, the Phoenix Force. And the Phoenix Force is the sum of all life in the universe. So moved by Jean's dedication and love, the Phoenix Force ends up forming a duplicate body and moves Jean's psyche into that. In that instant, the Phoenix Force is overwhelmed and believes itself to be Jean Grey, and places Jean's dying body in a healing cocoon in the meantime. And this cocoon is later described as the Phoenix Egg. The X-Men end up being unharmed, but the Phoenix Force as Jean Grey emerges in a new green and gold costume and adopts a new codename Phoenix. So meanwhile this is happening, that cocoon I talked about earlier, the Phoenix Egg, containing the real Jean Grey, sinks to the bottom of the bay unnoticed. And with Phoenix continuing her life as Jean Grey, with everyone really unnoticed, join them on missions and saving the universe. But now we're going to fast forward during the Dark Phoenix saga. Phoenix becomes overwhelmed and corrupted by her first taste of evil, and it actually transforms her into a total force of destruction. And this is where we actually call her Dark Phoenix. So with this, she inadvertently kills the inhabitants of a whole planetary system after consuming its star, and it jeopardizes the whole entire universe. But however, Jean's personality manages to take control of the Phoenix and commits suicide to ensure the universe's safety. So upon its suicide, Phoenix Force actually disperses back into its original form, but a little fragment is located into the still healing Jean Grey at the bottom of the Jamaican Bay, where the Phoenix Egg is held. And in trying to bond with her once more, Jean senses its memories of death and destruction as Dark Phoenix and rejects it, causing it to bond with a clone of Jean Grey by the villain Mr. Sinister named Madeline Pryor. I'm not going to dig too deep into Madeline Pryor because it's a whole other can of worms right there. So Jean Grey's clone was really designed to mate with Cyclops to create I guess, genetically superior mutants. But she was unaware to meet Cyclops in the first place, but in a situation that was engineered by Mr. Sinister, and the two fall in love, marry, and have a child. And this child's name is actually Nathan Summers, also known as Cable. Meanwhile, that cocoon I keep bringing up, still holding Jean Grey, is discovered and retrieved by the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. And with this, once it's found, Jean emerges with no memory of the actions of the Dark Phoenix or the Phoenix. And with this, the Avengers and Fantastic Four tell her of what has happened all this time she was gone, and how she was believed to be dead until now. She is reunited with the original X-Men and convinces the team to form a new superhero team called X-Factor. So very shortly after this, Jean learns that Cyclops has actually moved on romantically with Madeline, but Madeline Pryor is pretty angered about the situation over his decision to lead the X-Factor and neglect his family. Though Jean does encourage Cyclops to return to Madeline, he finds their house abandoned and assumes that Madeline has left and has taken their infant son, so Cyclops does what he does best. He moves on. Cyclops returns to X Factor, and he and Jean Grey continue their relationship once again. I can't make that up, guys. But while continuing on to the X Factor, Cyclops proposes to Jean, and she meets her alternate future daughter named Rachel Summers. And guys, I cannot, when it comes to multiverse and everything that has to do with X-Men, I will not keep up with this in this video, but that's a whole nother topic. But moving on. Well, in Rachel Summers, she actually goes by the codename Phoenix. I want to bring that up as well. It's kind of cool. And she's also able to tap into the Phoenix Force just a little bit. So when the X Factor unites with the X-Men, Jean joins the Gold Team, led by Storm, and during this time she no longer uses the codename Marvel Girl, and she's just known as Jean. So after some time, she does make up with Rachel after a short argument, but welcoming her into her life and proposes to Cyclops that the two should marry. On their honeymoon, the couple is immediately psychically transported 2,000 years into the future to raise Cyclops' son Nathan, who had been transported to the future as an infant in the hopes of curing him from a deadly virus. And as they raise Nathan for about 12 years until they are sent back into their bodies on their honeymoon, Jean does learn that at a time displaced Rachel had used her powers to actually transport them to the future to protect Nathan. And per Rachel's request, Jean adopts the codename Phoenix once again to establish that it's a symbol of good after all of the bad it has caused. Meanwhile, her psychic and telekinetic abilities begin to grow, and she begins using the iconic green and gold Phoenix costume once more. And following Cyclops' possession by the mutant villain Apocalypse and apparent death, Jean does continue with the X-Men, but is distraught by the loss of her husband. She later learns that she is an Omega level mutant with an unlimited potential, and that's huge for her character. At this time, Jean begins to suspect that Cyclops may still be alive, and with the help of Cyclops' son, now officially known as Cable, he is able to locate and free Cyclops of his possession by Apocalypse. The couple does return to the X-Men as part of the Xavier Institute's teaching staff for a new generation of mutants. While Jean does find she is slowly able to tap into her powers of the Phoenix once again, her marriage to Scott begins to fall apart, and this is where Jean and Wolverine start to address their long unspoken mutual attraction. Deciding it's best not to act on their feelings, Cyclops ends up growing further alienated from Jean due to her growing powers and her responsibilities to the Xavier Institute. And with this, Cyclops ends up meeting Emma Frost, first a counselor, then ends up being an affair, to where Emma and Cyclops truly love each other, so from there it's kind of a divorce with Jean Grey and Cyclops. So eventually, during a fight between an ex-teammate named Zorn and Jean Grey, she fully realizes and she can assume the complete control of the powers of the Phoenix Force, but is killed in a last-ditch effort by a lethal attack by Zorn. Eventually, a weakened Phoenix Force returns to reanimate Jean, and Jean tries to convince the Phoenix Force to let her go, but once again the Phoenix Force does take over. Now Jean lets Wolverine find her and tries to convince him to kill her again before the Phoenix does any more damage. Jean does take Wolverine to the North Pole and convinces him to kill her for sure, and he stabs her numerous times. But the Phoenix keeps reanimating her, prompting Jean to dive deep into the ice and freezes herself. And when the Phoenix Force does emerge with Emma Frost and overwhelms Cyclops, it frees Jean from the ice. Once again, Jean ejects the Phoenix Force from Emma, and she accepts that she is one with the Phoenix Force. And after feeling the love from the X-Men, the Phoenix does relent and returns with Jean Grey back to the White Hot Room. And the White Hot Room is a dimensional plane above really anything else. But before she departs, Jean and Cyclops share a telepathic emotional farewell. Eventually revived one last time. I swear guys, one last time. Jean does gather some of the greatest minds on Earth together so that she could read their minds to plan the next move. Recognizing there is a lot of issues going on with the anti-mutant protests, to the point where the plans are to abort pregnancies if they detect mutant Jean early on. Jean announces her plans to establish a more official mutant nation, not like Genosha, but making it clear that she wouldn't establish a geographic location. For said nation, like I said earlier, Genosha, as a past example, will make it clear that doing so just makes it a bigger target for the mutants themselves. So from here, we're going to talk about her powers and abilities. So Jean Grey, like I said earlier, is an Omega level mutant, and at her highest and strongest potential was fully merged with the Phoenix, with it able to defeat even Galactus. Her powers do include mainly telepathy and telekinesis, as one of the few telepaths skilled enough to communicate with even animals with high intelligence, such as dolphins, dogs, and ravens. I won't really mention the powers in the Phoenix Force. I might actually do a whole video on that because that's a whole separate thing. But since technically it's not her powers, I'm not going to go into detail on that. If you guys like this stuff, make sure to check me out. Make sure to subscribe. Check me out on Twitch. Join the Discord. Hang out with me there. Personally, Jean Grey, I feel like how they write her is wrong. I think we do get a lot of her and the Phoenix Force mixed together. But I do like how they're moving away from her always being with the Phoenix Force. What do you guys think? I think, like I said, she's an underwritten character, I think. But other than that, I think that's the video. So I'll check you guys out on the next one. Should be Saturday. Not sure what I'm doing, but it will be pretty good. I hope. Alright guys, see ya.